Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing power shift with your ex. I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details. www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing power shift with your ex. So if you have gone through a breakup, it can feel very disorientating. The natural dynamic you had throughout your relationship has potentially flipped around completely. And if you want to try to get your ex back, it can feel like you are trying to re-attract a stranger. In today's podcast, I will discuss how a shift in power affects your relationship, breakup, and aftermath. So let's get straight into this, and point number one is the relationship. So this is the normal way that you and your partner connected. Generally speaking, the person more in their masculine will lead the relationship by differing degrees. This could be connected to the concept of them having greater power within the dynamic. Now, it's very important for me to say that there is a distinction between natural leadership and being controlling. If you are controlling over your partner, not only is this a terrible trait, but it's quite possibly illegal in the country that you are living. Most countries have laws against coercive control, and these are negative, horrible traits which are not going to help you have a long-lasting, loving relationship. So if you feel that you are being overly controlling within your relationship, then quite possibly you might want to consider getting counselling or other professional help to help you work through these negative traits, and so you can have a healthier relationship. Because we're not speaking about being controlling here, we're speaking about natural leadership. So as I was saying, generally speaking, and I have to generalize when I do these podcasts, the person who is more likely to be the leader within the relationship is likely to be a man. If it is a heterosexual relationship, if it's a homosexual relationship, then obviously it would be one of the men, or if it's with two lesbians, then one of the females in that dynamic will be more in their masculine. So what we are looking at here is the person generally speaking in their masculine, the one who is more in their masculine, whether it is a man in a heterosexual relationship, whether it is one of the men in a homosexual relationship, whether it is one of the women within a lesbian relationship. Okay, there is going to be one person who is more in their masculine, and they are the person who will have in essence greater power within the dynamic. But we're not speaking about negative controlling power, we're just talking about natural leadership, so to speak. Now, when we consider all of these different relationship dynamics, we also have to acknowledge there could be instances where in a heterosexual relationship it is actually the female who is more in their masculine in this particular scenario. That is in the minority. Okay, most men are in their masculine, most women are in their feminine, and that is when we speak of the polarity of how relationships can work at their best, to differing degrees, of course. But it's important for us to recognize this possibility within all of the relationship dynamics when we are speaking about a power shift after a breakup, because we first need to understand where was the power beforehand. So even though the person in their masculine is likely to have some degree of power within the dynamic, generally speaking, the scales of value should be fairly equal. If you are in a relationship where one person has complete control over the other, as I said earlier, not only is that illegal and very negative, but it is not going to be congruent with having a long-lasting, loving relationship in most instances. There are always exceptions to the rule. Sometimes you will find people who really love being in their submissive to the point where they really want somebody to be completely in their dominant. But these instances are rarer. Okay, so when we look at this, we are basically saying that one person is going to be more of a leader and one person is going to be happier to sit back somewhat. However, the scales of value should still be fairly equal. Okay, to differing degrees, one person will be slightly more within their dominance, slightly more within their power, but roughly, slightly just different to even. We want it as even as possible, but naturally somebody will lead. That is how the relationship begins and maintains throughout its connection. And as we speak through this podcast, we will see what happens during a breakup and how this can affect the possibility of trying to get your ex back. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about power shift with your ex. And point number 2 is the breakup. So now we are looking at the breakup, and unfortunately for a breakup to occur, one person, or both in some instances, but especially one person, has lost romantic emotional attraction for their partner. And when this attraction level drops to a necessary low point, this is when they are likely to action a breakup. Now, when somebody makes a decision, which is what they want, and it doesn't matter what the other person thinks or cares, then they automatically become more powerful. So the person who enters the relationship, the dumper, becomes the person with the power. It doesn't matter if they are the man, it doesn't matter if they are the woman, it doesn't matter what the dynamic was within the relationship. At the time of a breakup, whoever ends the relationship becomes the person with more power. And this is because they have made a decision which will happen. Okay, they think something, they want something, it happens. They want the relationship to end, it does. It takes place, it is actioned. Now, the person who has been dumped, the dumpee, will likely, or especially as we describe in this situation, is not happy about this. We're not talking about a breakup which is mutually decided. We're speaking about how, in most instances, there is somebody who doesn't want the relationship to end, and the dumpee, as they now are, unfortunately for them, becomes somebody with less power. So the scales of value are going to be shifting very much in some regard, or even if the person who enters the relationship was in their masculine, it is going to really go a lot higher up. So let's try to break that down to make it a little simpler just to understand. As we said previously, the person in their masculine is likely to be within their power at least slightly more than the person in their feminine. And if the person in their masculine ends the relationship, then that will shoot up even further. The scales of value will not be balanced. Now, if we're speaking about the person in their feminine ending the relationship, then this has been a complete and utter power shift, because this will show that the person in their feminine who didn't have as much power, didn't have as much leadership in the relationship, all of a sudden, they are the leader because they've made the decision. They become the powerful person. The scales of value have completely shifted in that regard. So, it doesn't matter how the relationship looked, during a breakup, the person who is the dumpee loses all of their power. They lose all of their value, you might say, within the connection, because whatever they want is not happening. It doesn't matter whether they beg, whether they plead, whether they reason. It will not make a difference, and therefore their voice, their value, unfortunately, becomes lower. So the dumper becomes the higher value individual and the dumpee becomes the lower value individual. This doesn't mean that you are a high value or low value person per se within life, within the world. However, within this relationship dynamic, that is how it is. Okay, if you're the dumpee, you're wanting something which is being ignored. You want the relationship to continue. It is being ignored, and therefore you have no power over the situation. So when we look at the breakup, the dumper becomes the powerful person. The dumpee loses their power and becomes the lower value individual within this relationship dynamic, which at this time has unfortunately ended. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about power shift with your ex. And point number 3 is the aftermath. So we're now speaking about after the relationship ends. And we are speaking in the regard about somebody who wants to try to get their ex back. Now, if you have been dumped and you don't want to get your ex back, then it is irrelevant to you how this relationship power dynamic now stands, because you don't even want them back. It's irrelevant. However, if you do want to get your ex back, you need to try to make sure that the scales of value are as close and as even as possible. As I said previously, they're never going to be exactly even. There's always going to be somebody who is slightly more so of the leader. However, you need to be making it as equal as possible. Somebody who ends a relationship is only going to consider reconnecting with their ex if they subconsciously feel that the scales of value are equal. This isn't going to be something that they think of logically in their conscious mind per se, but subconsciously, unconsciously, they will want that as well. Most people are not attracted to people that they deem as low value. Most people are attracted to people that they feel are going to bring value to the relationship. And hence, it goes without saying, if somebody ends a relationship and they are subconsciously seeing their dumpy as low value, then they won't consider reconnecting unless they feel their dumpy has regrown and gained value. It doesn't matter at this time who was the leader, so to speak, before, who's masculine, who's feminine. It's now about dumper and dumpy. So after the relationship, after the dust has settled, the dumpy needs to behave in a way which grows their value. Okay, and the best way for a dumpy to do this, in my opinion, is to implement my version of the no contact rule. Now, I've said this before, but it's important to understand if you've not heard of a no contact rule before, you need to realise that there are many different versions of it you can find online. And just because we all may say that it will give you the best possible chance of success by implementing the no contact rule, you need to realise that there are different versions online. And I believe that my version will give you the best possible chance of success. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel, ring the bell for notifications, and listen to my playlist entitled The No Contact Rule so you can fully immerse yourself in my version of a rule. This will allow you to really understand my reasoning as to why I think it will give you that edge on regaining your value. So the important thing to really consider at this time is that the no contact rule, or my version specifically, will suggest that in most instances, you never contact your ex again unless they contact you first if you are the dumpy. So if you have been dumped, you never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. If you do this, if you behave in this way, then this fundamentally shows you are a valuable person. Because there is nothing less valuable than being needy and desperate, okay? If you're needy, if you're desperate, if you're chasing something that keeps knocking you back, then that is not attractive. That's not valuable. You don't show yourself as being valuable if you are so easily available. So let's consider something such as diamonds. Diamonds are known as being valuable. Why is that? Well, it's not just because they glisten, it's because they are rare. Scarcity creates value. So something which is rare, like a diamond, is valuable. You need to make yourself rare. You need to become scarce. Scarcity creates value. Scarcity will grow your value. And that is why it is linked to my version of the no contact rule. So if you've been dumped and you want to try to get your ex back, you need to realise that to raise your value, chasing your ex is not going to help. If you're so easily available, then your ex will never learn what life is like without you. If they know deep down that you will message them every few days, every week, even every month, they know that they can live their life, try new things, date new people, but it doesn't matter because they have you as a backup option. They need to genuinely believe that you have gone forever. They need to genuinely believe that you have walked away and you aren't going to consider reconnecting. And the best way you can do this is to implement my version of the no contact rule. Living your life to the full, improving every day, making new connections, and all of the intricacies that I speak about in the no contact rule playlist on my YouTube channel. If you do this, if you behave in this way, then you will increase your value. Your ex will wonder about you. You will become scarce. You will show yourself as somebody who doesn't need their former partner. And if you don't need them, that starts to make them feel unconsciously nervous, unconsciously less valuable than they imagined. The dumper doesn't want their dumpy consciously to chase them. Consciously in their conscious mind, they don't want the dumpy to chase them, but subconsciously, they're expecting their ex to chase them. Subconsciously, they're expecting their dumpy to push them on that pedestal and to reaffirm their value. And hence, when somebody doesn't chase their dumper, when somebody doesn't chase their ex, they're rocking the boat. They're creating confusion and they're showing that they are also valuable, whilst also pulling down the dumper a peg or two. And this, of course, as you could see, will start to level the scales of value. If you can level these scales as best as possible, you will stand every chance of the dumper regrown romantic emotional attraction for their dumpy. And if this attraction hits the necessary high point, this this is when the dumper will likely reach out to their ex and you will enter the communication stage. If you want to learn more about communicating with your ex, if you want to learn more about how to try to get your ex back and give you the best possible chance of doing so, you might want to consider my audio coaching service, more details of which can be found on my website, www.dateme.tips. There is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back, but you can definitely improve your chances, and this might be something you consider could be useful for you. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.
Yeah, if you miss your ex, we can help with that. Help you get him back, or we can help find you someone else. Yeah, Vincent, the relationship coach, giving you some insight, bringing you a new approach. DateMe.tips, go and check the site, giving you advice, helping with your love life. Get your ex back, or move to the next. Ain't no sweat, you know Vincent got you. Finding love ain't no problem. Yeah, DateMe.tips, check it out now.